So welcome to our auto claims video specifically for no-fault states. If you're in a no-fault state and you're either involved in a claim right now or you want to know what to do when you do experience a claim, this is the place for you. We're going to walk you through the basics from beginning to end as to how you can expect to experience a claim when it happens. So let's dig right in. What are you going to learn? Well, we're going to start off with at the scene. It's a scary moment when you're at the scene, and we're going to give you 3 basic ideas for things you can do to make sure your claims experience is a good one. Then we're going to tell you about the claims adjuster. And finally, we're going to dig right into the claims process and really talk through what you should expect from beginning to end of the claim itself with the company after the accident has happened. So let's get started. We first want to review and cover, the things that we have covered before, and we're here in the claims part of our video, our course, and so we've been through most of it. I mean, we've been through almost everything. We just have these claims video, the auto claim that you're in right now, and then the homeowner's claim after this. But what have we done before? Well, we started with the policy basics. The most important thing there was the coverage limits that we talked about. We talked about property versus liability, which we have stayed with that throughout because those two kinds of coverage are really what insurance is made of. Auto policy, home policy, your personal umbrella or excess liability coverage. Those are the things that we have talked about so far, the coverage that exists on your home and auto policies. Now we're getting into the claims situations with the auto claim we're doing right now and the home, like I said. Tiny disclaimer, gotta say it again, this course is meant to provide very general advice. I am in no way confirming details about your specific insurance policies. Those conversations should happen between you and your insurance advisors, and in these claim situations, you and the claims adjuster, the company, all the people who are involved in your claim to know exactly what is happening with your exact policy. So let's talk about at the scene. Man, accidents are scary. I've been in a couple. And maybe you've been in an accident, maybe you've been in an accident recently, that's why you're watching this video, or maybe you just can think of some that you've been in before. They are not fun moments in your life. There's no doubt about it. This is tough times, and so sometimes we forget what we're supposed to do. And learning about it right now is going to help you make those good decisions when you are at the scene. So the first thing to do is, call the police. So if you're in a bad accident in this day and age with cell phones and all that kind of stuff, you're not going to have to call the police. They've already been called by someone else who saw it. But if you're in a small fender bender, these are the ones where I just have to tell you, it's a good idea to have a police report, no matter how small the accident is. Especially if someone's saying they're hurt or any of those kinds of things, you want to have a police report. Now, you're in a no-fault state, and so it's probably tempting not to call the police because it doesn't matter as much. These small claims, you're going to pay for your stuff, the other person's going to pay for their stuff. So not as big of a reason to have a police report. These are your decisions. You can decide what you do in the very small claims. My advice is really to call the police and get that police report no matter what. Because, someone can say something at the scene, and unfortunately I see this all the time. Someone says something at the scene, I'm fine, let's not call the police, or I really don't want to get the police involved, some of this kind of stuff. And then suddenly they turn around and they have a whole different story when they contact their insurance company or a lawyer or any of those kinds of things. And you don't have a police report to back you up. The police report is the single most important document in an auto insurance claim. So having a police report is super essential, even in the smallest claims. Get everybody's insurance info. I have these scenarios oftentimes where my client calls, this is what's going on, and I say, okay, what's the other people's insurance stuff? And they weren't able to collect it. It may not feel super important, because fault isn't as primary a factor in a no-fault state, but having everyone's insurance information is still super key because you just don't know how it's going to play out. These claims play out in so many different ways. And so we want to have that information from the start so we understand where to go with it. So get everybody's insurance information. And finally, this is kind of, don't admit fault. When we're in an accident, especially if it feels like our fault, we're tempted to get out and apologize and really, say it was our fault. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm such an idiot. What was I thinking? This is a natural response to an accident situation. And I'm not asking you to be callous, and I'm not asking you to just be a big jerk about it all. I just think you have to be careful with your words. Can you go up and make sure the person is okay? Can you, examine the damage? Can you even talk about how it happened? Sure, but when someone, don't say things like, oh, it was absolutely my fault, or I shouldn't have done that. Just leave that stuff out. Leave it to the process to figure those things out. Don't be callous, don't be mean, but at the same time, watch the words that you say at the scene, because they could come back to haunt you in a deeper into the claim, depending on what happens. Okay, so the accident has happened. You've taken care of either getting your car towed, going to the hospital, or if it was a small thing, just driving home. And once things are settled, it's time to call your company or your insurance agent and tell them about the claim. So, that makes sense. Do you have to call them from the scene of the accident? No, you don't. I do get calls from the scene of accidents, especially when people are confused and just want help understanding what to do next. I love helping people in those situations, but you don't have to call from the scene of the accident, but do call soon after. That makes total sense. And have the insurance information for all the parties ready if you can. If you don't have everybody's information because of one thing or another, should you just not call? No, of course not. You definitely call and share as much of the information as you have, but have that ready if it's available to you. If you're calling the company directly, I think people struggle with this idea. The person who you talk to is unlikely to have a lot of answers. Look, it's just their job to collect the information, to get it submitted, and get the process started. So you're going to start asking them questions, and they're going to be like, well, I don't know. It's just my job to collect your information, and that might feel a little frustrating. But it is just their job to collect the information. You're going to get a lot more information from the next steps in the process. So just know that, if you call your agent, then your agent probably does have a little more information about how things will happen and what the next steps are. But if you're calling the company and getting their, first frontline people, you're not going to get very many answers from them. And that's okay. But you do want answers to 3 questions. And that's what I'm going to tell you about right now. The first one is a claim number. Just like any other thing that happens in big businesses, a number is what drives people's ability to pull up information about that thing. And so you want to have the claim number right off so that you can use it later and use it to connect with whomever you need to collect with. So get a claim number, and they should always have a claim number by the end of the conversation there. Finally, ask for the adjuster's contact information. I'll tell you a little bit more about adjuster in just a second, but this is going to be your main connection. And oftentimes they can give you the contact right off. Now, more often than not, they're going to say, well, we have not assigned an adjuster yet, and that's perfectly fine. But what is the contact information for me to get in touch with the adjuster if they don't get in touch with me? Sometimes it's the same number that you had just called. Sometimes it's a specific different number that's either for a group of people that's in the claims department or that one specific adjuster if they have it already. And then finally, when can you expect a call from the adjuster? Claims are all about reasonable expectations. Step by step, you're going to go through a process. And you want to know at each step when the next step should be complete, so that if it doesn't happen, you are reasonably contacting whomever it is that's supposed to take care of it and asking what's going on. You don't want to be calling people all the time, and just asking and asking and asking. That's a way to make them unhappy and not really help you out like you're really looking for. So when you ask at the end of this conversation, when can I expect a call from the adjuster? The person collecting your information should give you an answer. Well, it'll be within 24 hours. It'll be by the end of this business day. Whatever it is, note that. And if they don't call by then absolutely use that information that you got with the second point to get a hold of them on your own. You can facilitate the next step if they don't facilitate it in the period of time that they said they would. Now, if they say 24 hours, you called on Monday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's Monday at 5, and you're, calling the adjuster trying to get information, I'm going to say that's a great way to not get what you want. But if you called in the claim at Monday at 3 o'clock, and it's Tuesday at 3 o'clock, perfect time to call and say, hey, you guys said 24 hours. It's been 24 hours. I just wanted to make the connection. No problem with that. So that's submitting the claim. I've been alluding to this claims adjuster. So let's bring the claims adjuster into the picture. Here's our claims adjuster. Maybe yours is this much fun, maybe not. I don't know. He or she comes obviously from all different threads of life, but these claims adjusters are important people. And in fact, I'm going to say they are your new best friend because they are the company representative that makes claim decisions. This is the person who is going to run your claim. They're going to make the decisions about coverage, about when things happen, about when the check gets cut. They're making all those decisions. And so they are an incredibly important person in your life during your claims experience. One quick, unsolicited piece of advice: be nice to this person. I hear these stories all the time, and I talk with claims adjusters all the time about how oftentimes it's my clients or other stories, but how the claims adjuster is being treated by the person, the insured, the person who has the insurance and is going through the claim. And it just boggles my mind why you would treat this person poorly, why you would yell at this person, why you would call this person 4 or 5 times a day, and it just, for not really any reasonable reason. You've got to be nice to this person. They have a lot of power in the situation, and anytime someone has power, we want to dance around that thoughtfully. And generally, these are very good people, very thoughtful people. Even if you have one who isn't a great, thoughtful person, it still does not make sense to be unkind to that person. So be nice to your claims adjuster. Okay, let's talk about the claim process. So we had the accident, we submitted the claim. What happens next? Well, there's coverage for all these different things, and one of those things is your car. So first thing is your car. The second thing is your injuries. And then finally, it's any liabilities that you have in this situation. And even in no-fault states, we know there are liabilities involved, or potentially are liabilities involved. And so, that can come into play in an accident. So let's get started. Your car. Well, if it's a perfect scenario, it goes like this. Step 1, estimate. Step 2, get car fixed. Step 3, pay deductible. Step 4, drive car away. It's pretty easy, right? And sometimes it does work out this way. Sometimes it's as simple as you take your car in and you get a rental car, and so your car is in the shop, an estimate is created, sent to the insurance company. Insurance company looks at it, cuts a check, sends it back to the collision center. Collision center fixes your car. All is well. You go back in there, drop off your rental car, pay whatever your deductible is, and drive your car away. That is, in a nutshell, exactly how fixing your car goes. But the reality is, it can have all these different facets. And so, it's not always a perfect scenario. And so my best advice to you is that first time you speak with the claims adjuster, when that claims adjuster calls you and asks you all the questions about the accident, say, could you please explain how this is going to work and how coverage works with your company? Because sometimes the claims adjuster wants to personally come out and see the car, or sends a field adjuster out to see the car. Sometimes they need an estimate and then they cut a check. Sometimes they just have direct relationships with certain collision centers that there is no estimate necessarily. It's just between the company and the collision center. So, there are different ways that different companies work, and you want to understand that from the get-go. You want to see, okay, how is this step 1 through 4 going to work? And how's the rental car situation going to work while I don't have my car? So asking your adjuster to describe that to you is super important. But, best case scenario, these 4 steps are exactly how your car is going to get fixed in an accident. Yeah, I already said that. Ask the adjuster to describe the process in detail because every company is different. Totally true. The more information you have from your actual company, the better off you're going to be. And rental reimbursement, this coverage is for a rental car while your car is being fixed. And it's if you have the coverage. A lot of times people opt out of this coverage, and so you don't have coverage for a rental car. And I find that folks are very disappointed when that happens in a claim situation. And so I would advise to have it on your policy. It usually isn't very expensive, and it comes in very handy when your car is going to be out of commission for 2 weeks to have the rental car covered on your policy. That coverage usually has limits, and it has a per day limit and a total limit. So a common amount is $30 per day, $900 altogether. So that's how much your insurance company is willing to pay for a rental car, essentially, $30 a day up to a month, right? That's about how much time they are willing to cover your car. But you just have to talk to your insurance company. First, you got to find out if you have that coverage, and then, look at your coverage limits. Okay, so your car is covered by, that. And then finally, your car is totaled. And totaled simply means that it's going to cost more to fix the car than it's worth. So if you have a $10,000 car, a car that's worth $10,000, and you take it into the collision center, and the collision center says, well, it's going to be $13,000 to fix this car. Your insurance company is going to say, you know what, it's not worth it. I'd rather just cut a check for $10,000. You can go buy another car or put that as a down payment on a new car. Whatever you want to do, we'll cut you the check rather than fixing the car. And that's when we describe the vehicle as totaled. And so what to expect, people always ask in totaled situations because it's kind of this weird what's going to happen situation. And you can generally look up on Kelley Blue Book or any of the other trade-in estimators online and look at trade-in value for your vehicle. And the check tends to be that or a little bit more. But I think creating your expectations around that trade-in value is an important place to think that you're going to get the check. And then if it's more, it feels good. So a totaled vehicle is you're just going to get a check for it. A lot of times the company will want you to sign the title over to them, and they will salvage the vehicle. But you get money, you move on with your life, they write you a check. That's the end in a totaled car situation. How about coverage for your injuries? Again, we're in a no-fault state, so at the base level, coverage for your injuries are going to be on you no matter whether you were at fault in the accident or not. And so it's going to be covered by your auto insurance and specifically your personal injury protection. And how that covers, let's stick with personal injury protection here for a second. How personal injury protection covers has a lot to do with your state and how it's set up. It should cover your medical expenses, oftentimes up to a coverage limit. So find out what that coverage limit is. It should cover your loss of ability to work for a period of time. Oftentimes there is a coverage limit for that, so find out how long that is. And then any kind of pain and suffering is figured in there as well. So any kind, if you're in a situation where you or your family members are hurt in an accident, you definitely want to get connected with your claims adjuster and, just say, okay, I know that my personal injury protection covers for my medical bills and, the loss of my ability to work and some pain and suffering. Tell me how we get this figured out so that I can maximize, getting paid for the amount of loss that has happened in my life. Nothing is going to, make your arm perfect if your arm is broken or make your life perfect if you aren't able to work. But, insurance policies are, there for this purpose. And so you want to be able to use them to their maximum ability. Some no-fault policies also have medical payments on them. I'll throw it in here because they can have medical payments. And medical payments is a more flexible coverage that's more easy to access. And so if you have medical payments and you have a small claim, you should be able to easily access money from the company. They should be able to cut a check very quickly for medical bills that you have. Oftentimes medical payments comes before personal injury protection. Your medical payments is going to pay out, then your personal injury protection will pay on top of that. So just really get a sense of what your policy has on it in these situations and chat with your claims adjuster. And if you don't feel comfortable with that, with your certainly with your insurance agent. Okay. If it's necessary to go further with your injuries, so these are worst case scenarios, you have coverage for that. There's a couple of different ways to go about it. So first, if you are not at fault in the accident, and this is why collecting all the information and getting that police report from the very beginning is important. If you're not at fault in the accident, even though you live in a no-fault state, it is possible to pursue the at-fault driver for pain and suffering, medical expenses, loss of ability to work, some of those kinds of things, depending on the situation. And you have liability coverage on their policy. They should have liability coverage on their policy as well. So if it goes above and beyond your medical payments, above and beyond your personal injury protection, you can find out about the ability to go after the at-fault driver to cover additional expenses that you have. And if they don't have coverage or they don't have enough coverage, then your uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage on your policy will jump in and play a role there. And exactly in the reverse, if you're at fault in an accident and someone else's personal injury protection coverage doesn't cover them, or they come from an at-fault state, they drove into your no-fault state, and they have at-fault coverage, that gets really interesting. And so having your liability coverage is important. Or you drive into an at-fault state. You live in, say, Michigan. Michigan is a no-fault state, and you live there, you have no-fault coverage, you drive into Indiana and get in an accident. Well, now we're under at-fault rules, and so your liability coverage is going to come into play even more significantly than it can come into play in a no-fault state. But your liabilities will be covered there. And while no-fault states do avoid many potential liability situations, it's still possible to be sued for injuries in special cases. I just described a few of them. And so your liability coverage addresses bodily injury to other people and property damage to other people's stuff. So injuries to other people and property damage to other people's stuff. And the great thing about insurance is that you have very little to do with resolving the liability portion of the claim. You really don't have to deal with it that much. If it's, I have claims all the time where somebody comes in, they submit the claim, we set it all up, and then they move on with their lives, and they never know that $4,000 or $5,000 was paid out to the other person or whatever it was. They don't know anything about it because they don't have to be involved in it. The insurance company has their own law system, their own lawyers, and they're going to make their own agreements with the other parties involved. The beauty of liability coverage on an auto policy is, for the most part, you do not have to be involved in the steps. So when are the times that you will need to be involved? Well, there's more than just what I'm about to say, but here's the two most common. If you're asked to testify in court, obviously if there is a court case, you are going to be involved in that court case as, a major player in the situation. So you would, need to be involved at that point. And if the damage exceeds your liability limits, because now your pocketbook is brought into the situation, and so you are involved, not only involved to pay out, but also the lawyers for your insurance company are going to stop supporting you because your coverage limits have been met. And so you'll potentially have to deal with some lawyer fees and things of that nature too. So those are the two times that you would really be brought in. One thing I think it's super important to know, people get frustrated all the time about this situation. And I understand why. I get frustrated by this situation, but it's just important to know. When a lawsuit is involved, the insurance company can settle whether you think they should or not. So settling means they're going to offer the other party a smaller amount of money than they're asking for them to stop the lawsuit and just end it. So the insurance company, your insurance company, is footing the bill, and whether they choose to settle or not is their decision. Now, if you feel like this lawsuit that's brought against you is total baloney, which I have felt about plenty of lawsuits I've seen as an insurance agent, you don't want them to settle. You don't want the other person to feel like they could get some money. You don't want your country to feel like a place where you can just sue and get money. I mean, there's plenty of ugliness about settlements, and I get it. I understand it, and I agree with it. But the bottom line is insurance companies are making financial decisions. They're looking at how much is it going to cost us to go through this process as opposed to how much it's going to cost us to just hand this person a check and move on with our lives. And whether we like it or not, it's their money that's involved in the situation, and they are allowed to settle if they want to. So I just thought I'd throw that out because it happens, and it's frustrating when it happens a lot of times. All right, rookie mistake. Big rookie mistake. And I've already harped on this one. I think you know it from me. But being mean to your claims adjuster, it just doesn't help at all. I mean, maybe when you call, your mobile phone company, I kind of can be mean with them sometimes, I admit it. And, they're just so far away from the situation. And if I'm kind of mean with them and I don't get what I want, sometimes I just hang up and call again and get some totally different person. That is a different scenario. These are people, this is one individual who is in charge of whether you're going to have a good experience or not. And I'm not saying these are vindictive people. I'm sure some of them are, some of them aren't. I've met tons of great claims adjusters, and I really almost every claims adjuster I've worked with has been wonderful. But don't be mean to them. It just doesn't help your situation, and I've seen people do this over and over again, and it is a rookie mistake for sure. Don't be mean to your claims adjuster. All right, what did you learn here? We learned what to do at the scene of an accident. We introduced you to your claims adjuster and reminded you not to be mean to that person, and we walked you through the claims process. Now, there's tons more to claims, all kinds of variables. You just want to be on top of it. You want to be on top of what's supposed to happen next. And if it doesn't happen, you want to hold people to task on it. So, that's how the best claims work, is just holding people to task on what they're supposed to do. And I gave you a basic foundation in how that works. So what's next? Well, there is one more video in this series. That is it for the regular videos. There's just one more. You're that close to no longer being perplexed about insurance. And really, as far as you've come to this point, you aren't perplexed about insurance anymore. But there's one more video that we need to dig into, and that is the homeowners claims video. So much like I just broke down auto claims, I will break down homeowners claims, and they're actually very different the way they are gone about. So make sure you check that out, whether it's right now or down the road a little bit. Head over to that homeowners claims video and get done with that very last thing. And these claims videos, so important. So I encourage you to do that. And then, as always, the last step in this video is to head over to the Make Insurance Simple Facebook group and share your questions and comments. And I feel like after this one, I would have to imagine that I brought up at least one claims story in your mind while you listen to this video. Oh my gosh, yeah, I remember this happened to me, or this happened to my aunt, or oh yeah, it turned out so badly. I hear bad claim stories all the time, and it really has to do with not following, what I just laid out for you, and not making sure and holding people to task in a nice way. I want to hear your stories, and I think other people could learn from your stories too. So I hope you'll go over to that Facebook group right now and just share a claim story. If it's a great claim story, awesome. If it's an awful claim story, we want to hear it. And so head over there right now, share your stories. And of course, if you have questions, comments, something I didn't cover in this video that you really wanted to know about, pop it out over there, and someone will answer, and I can chime in and answer as well. So take a little deep breath and go get a drink of water. Head over to the Facebook group, or just dive right in to the homeowners claims video. Can't wait to see you there.